Thank you, Carla. I'll start with water as well, Minister. I too am a little bit confused now. You've been confusing people on this issue for a whole number of months. Are you now not proceeding with the deduction proposal that you had in your motion 2 weeks ago? For example, will tenants who are council tenants or social housing tenants have this deducted by local authorities or not? Because I expected to see that in the bill, because that's what Irish Water has in its information on its website and what you said in the motion. And this morning we hear that landlords are now to be consulted with before proceeding with your proposal to deduct it from deposits of renters. Now, I disagree with both proposals, and if you've backtracked on them, I'm delighted. But I think people deserve to know that, because the bill doesn't have many of the things that you said in the motion and in the debate 2 weeks ago. And I'm just also wondering, Minister, is this because you don't want to add fuel to the fire for the December 10th protest, which I can tell you everyone in the country is talking about? I visited 4 picket lines of teachers this morning, and they were talking about seeing and finding ways to go in on December the 10th. So if you're trying to calm things down, that's probably a right decision, but I do think that people who are renters just should deserve to know. Just on housing, Minister, it's quite incredible that it's taken the death of a man on the streets to bring this back into the Dáil chamber, because it hasn't been discussed for about 4 weeks now. And let's face facts here, if it wasn't in front of the Dáil, nobody would be talking about it. And the idea that the Minister this morning expressed shock that this would happen, why would you be shocked? I mean, there's 160 people rough sleeping, but there's hundreds of other families next door to it, really. They're only on the verge of, it's been talked about for 1.5 years intensively now. So for any minister to express shock that a homeless person has died. So I just wanted to comment on your housing document, and can you clarify, first of all, the Taoiseach just indicated there in Leaders' Questions that this will be discussed in the Dáil next week? Because you release a housing document, and again, just like water, there's no discussion in the actual Dáil about it. This is the most pressing social problem we have in our society. Nothing tops it, absolutely nothing, water or nothing else. The reason that people are angry about water, quite rightly, is because it affects every single person. But there is no more serious problem than the housing emergency that we have. Now, I've read through your documentation, and I've spent about a week looking through it. I don't see any additional capital investment by the state on what you announced in the budget, for example. In the budget, you indicated there'd be 1.5 billion direct capital investment, 300 million from public-private partnerships, which we all know is a failed policy of the past, and 4 million in the new off-balance sheet that's become so popular with this government, which seems to be an outsourcing of house building to NGOs and an attempt then to raise money on the markets by speculators as well. In Pillar 1 of you have 3 pillars, and in the first one, you give the impression that there's going to be 35,000 additional social housing units over 6 years. Can I first of all say that that's a pittance, even if it did happen? That would be roughly 6,000 houses a year, which is very, very little if you consider that during the Celtic Tiger there was 80 to 90,000 houses built a year. But people sitting at home might think, oh, well, listen, that's a great start, but they're not additional houses. What they are is leasing. There may be some of them are additional. Maybe you could clarify exactly how many will be. But it also includes in that figure leasing, refurbishing, and outsourcing to housing agencies or approved housing bodies, PPPs and Part 5s, and we all know Part 5 didn't work before. So it isn't that you're going to get built 35,000 new houses. The second pillar is your old friend, the private landlords. Basically what you're going to be doing is just moving people who are already in accommodation in the private rented sector, and they're either going to remain in that private home that they're in, or they're going to go to another one. So again, there's no additional housing. And the third one, rather worryingly, and I think this does merit discussion in the Dáil, is you're talking about reforms of a new, quote, a new framework for rents and related charges for local authority housing. Now, the way I read that is that you want to move to a situation where there's basically full cost recovery through the rents of the cost of those houses. This has been something that that's been hinted at in lots of housing documents for a long time. And the doing away with the differential rent scheme that tenants enjoy, and moving to a different model, which again I don't have time to go into, but I can hopefully if there's a Dáil discussion. The other thing is, just very lastly, is on the immediate homeless crisis that's been brought to publicity because of this tragic death. I mean, it's quite incredible. NAMA own 12% of all hotels in this country, and we can't put homeless people in them. And your government is telling NAMA to speed up the sale of those hotels to try to get their books back in balance. You should stop that now. The second thing is, you're going around boasting that you've given 55 million to homelessness. You gave 83.5 million in tax breaks to hotels and developers this year. So what you've given to homelessness is nothing. In the third quarter, in 3 months of 2014, Dublin City Council paid almost 2.5 million to hotels, just in 3 months. The figures are in the Irish Times. The Travelodge, 133,000, Bewley, Sunnybank, the Inn on the Liffey. I'm sure every family's dying to get a place in there. New Dara Limited in Portobello. And, you know, they're not 5-star hotels, by the way. They're far from it. They're called a lot of things, you know, by a lot of people. So why is money shoveled in the direction of these hotels when we actually NAMA have hotels that we could be putting people into as an immediate end? Why are we talking about important containers, for example? But look, at the end of the day, the last point I'd make is this. I believe there's an ideological aversion by this government, and Fianna Fáil I'd count in it as well. I don't think they're that different, to doing what needs to be done. There's only been 2 decades in the 20th century when the housing crises were tackled. That was the 1930s and the 1970s. And the way it was done was by public house building on a mass scale. That's the way it was done. But your government has set its face against doing that, and it's relying on the private sector
Thank you, Deputy.
to do it.
Thank you, Deputy. No, as agreed, we're going to go to the